Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of the BFG podcast. This week is going to be a little bit different because we don't have Garrett with us. He's actually traveling right now. And so we're going to do an episode where instead of reviewing a movie and doing an opening segment with it like a top 10 or something like that, I'm going to be doing a personal WHAPMASDER on Garrett since he's not here. We're going to review him just like we would review any of our other movies using the 10 domain WHAPMASDER index. If you're not familiar, the WHAPMASDER is a system that we've created to go over 10 different aspects of filmmaking on a technical level to add up to an overall score that reflects how much we enjoyed it or how we feel about it in a more objective way than just giving it like a star rating or something. So this week on the WHAPMASDER, we have Garrett. The first category in WHAPMASDER is W. It stands for the writing. Is the film well written, clever, and cohesive? Are there plot holes, cringeworthy dialogue, or unmotivated moments just to squeeze in a gag or a sexual encounter? For this, I gave Garrett a 7. I feel like it kind of goes both ways. There are moments where he does have good things to say, where he is invested, but there are also just as many times where he gives out some sort of cheap gag or something that just leads to a crude joke, and I feel like that's less optimal than it could be. And just like in the movies, if it's just full of crude gags that lead to sexual encounters or something like that, you're going to enjoy it less. I would enjoy it less than something that actually contributes to the film as a whole. And the same is true with Garrett. We can't really give him more than a 7 if he's just going to crack jokes and be that guy the whole time. The next is H in the WHAPMASDER. It stands for heart. Some movies revel in their own bad intent. We watch movies with heart to make us feel things. Does the movie compel us, inspire us, or make us think? Do we learn or grow from it? Is it forgettable or too despicable for its own good? For this, I gave it a 9. He does seem to genuinely enjoy the podcast. He provides some great commentary for the movies, and he compliments me in the podcast, and those are all great things. And he holds a steady girlfriend, so that speaks to his character. Sometimes he does insult me jokingly, so I knocked off a point for that. But otherwise, I would say he has a lot of heart, so I gave him a 9. The A, the first A in WHAPMASDER, stands for acting. This covers the obvious, the performances by the primary cast member, which in this case is Garrett. For this, I gave him a 10 because I can't normally even tell whether he's playing the role of my friend that I pay him for, or if he's actually being friendly to me. And that's the mark of a great actor, when you can't tell when they're acting. So for that, I had no choice but to give him a 10, because he is excellent at pretending to enjoy being around me. The next category is P for production design. Do sets and costumes fit the genre and time period? Does makeup portray the situation, or does the beaten down hero still look perfectly coiffed while lying in the dirt? For this, I gave him a 1. I mean, especially after giving him such a high score for acting, it's tough because he mostly just dresses the same all the time. And I feel like without some more variation in his production design, I can't give him a very high score. Most of it's just kind of like jackets, V-necks, maybe a t-shirt every now and then. And so I can't really reward him much above the minimum. So for production design, I just gave him a 1. Next is M for marketing. Many movies give away too much or not enough in trailers, use poor music choices, or just don't give enough marketing to get people excited for the film. Were we excited to see him, and why or why not? For this, I gave him an 8. I can genuinely say that most of the time I am excited to see Garrett. And when you look at him, you really do know what you're getting. There's no false advertising there. Garrett is very much Garrett, whether you like it or not. So I gave him an 8. I feel like his marketing is exactly what you need to know about him. The next A is for audio. This category covers the orchestration and song choices and whether they enhance or elevate the film. For Garrett, I gave him a 4. I think he does have a pleasant enough voice, and he does help to move the podcast along, but there's just really no sound design, like, at all. Like, there's no music choices. Nothing happens when he enters or leaves a room, besides, maybe again, like a crude joke or something. And it all just feels very like cringe humor. It's more like Nathan For You or The Office or Parks and Rec. There's not a lot to elevate his presence to me. So for that, I just gave him a 4. Next is S for shooting. This is the cinematographer's job. Is the cinematography eye-catching? What color palette do they use? And is there a reason they use it to enhance the movie? Does the camera work enhance the scenes or make them unique? For this, I gave him a 10. And I'm going to step aside from this gag, from this bit for a minute, just to say that the podcast looks the way it does because of Garrett. Just plain and simple. I had a webcam that I was using to record the podcast, but when he came on board, I handled a lot of like the computer and audio aspect of it. His passion is for photography and cinematography, and he recommended the cameras and helped set them up and figure out the lighting, which is why maybe this episode will look a little bit less pleasing to the eye, because Garrett's not here to help me. And what we have as far as the visuals for the podcast is all a credit to Garrett and his eye for this sort of thing, which isn't my forte. My forte lies with some of the other aspects, and this is all credit to him. So within the context of the bit, it's a 10, and outside the context of the bit, I'm so grateful to him that he knows this side of it, and he was able to help me set up this kind of studio with a camera. But moving on to directing. D for directing. Perhaps one of the most important elements, the director makes sure the movie comes together. Is the film effective at conveying a tone, message, or visual that the director intended, and can you identify them by their good or bad habits when filming? For this, I gave it a 7. Sometimes his segments become a little bit disjointed or run off on tangents. It's all a little bit incoherent. And when he's on point, I mean, it's great. But I can't really give him above a 7 because sometimes it doesn't really feel like a comprehensive bit whenever he's talking. It runs on a little bit and becomes about something else entirely. E for editing, in the same vein. Does the movie have a visual rhythm? Does it flow well, keep the viewer engaged, and scrub bad performances? Which angles do they decide to use when cutting between cameras? This one's tough. I gave it a 5. I went right down the middle of the road. His rhythm can get interrupted. And that's the same thing I was just saying with his directing, is that it becomes a little bit incoherent. There are tangents, and he starts talking about one movie and ends up talking about another movie, or ends up talking about a TV show or some music or something like that. And it all just becomes like one long drug out thing instead of sticking to the point. And really, that's what editing is for, is to scrub bad performances and to make the actors look good. And I know that, even good editing can't really fix Garrett's face. He's working with what he's got, but good editing should be able to at least cut out some of the worst offenders. And unfortunately, whenever I'm hanging out with Garrett, sometimes his face just is still there. And the editing can't fix that. And so I can't give him above a 5. But finally, to bring things back around, is reflection. This is the most subjective of our categories. It's simply a gauge of how much we enjoyed the film because of or despite the rankings we gave in other categories. And for that, I gave Garrett a 9. He really seems like a great guy. He's an immaculate actor, and he's a great podcast partner. I can confidently give him a 9, but, hey, like the elementary school teachers always said, there's always room for improvement. So with that said, that covers the WHAPMASDER on Garrett. Until the next episode, we're going to be talking about our top 10 actresses in film, and we're going to be talking about what we thought of the new film version of Dear Evan Hansen, which is a musical that's dear to my heart in musical or on Broadway format. I've got conflicting feelings about the movie, but we'll talk about that next week when Garrett has returned. But until then, I hope you guys have a great week, and we will see you next time. Bye.